What up, folks? It's Mikey G here. I am super excited to be back. We had a freaking stream last night, and now I'm here. By the way, I'm in California, so it is 6:44 in the morning. I was thinking to myself, man, maybe I shouldn't make podcasts at 6:30 in the morning anymore. But I'm excited because everybody's schedule is so busy, and the man, the myth, the legend, Charles is here. Charles, welcome back to the show. How are you doing, brother?
I'm well. Good to be here, man. It's been too long.
I know it's been so long. You got a nice little studio. I feel like last time I was talking to you, you might have been in like a home office. Now it looks like legit. You've got a company, like things are happening. It's pretty amazing. So a little housekeeping on the midlife side. We got another podcast on Thursday. We got Simply from Say Product. He's an AI generative artist on the Say blockchain. Comes from the Dob ecosystem. Really cool dude. Excited to have that conversation. And then I am going to Disney with the family next week, so there's going to be a little gap from me. But it's exciting. We have 3 podcasts this week, and I'm excited to keep on pumping out the content and not giving up. So since some of you don't know, Charles was on this podcast in 2022. All you suckers are thinking, Charles is just this, amazing new meta gaming company, and this guy's been grinding for years, just like Midlife. So it's exciting to have him back. And instead of doing our typical format of going, the Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3 and doing a deep dive into his background, we're going to do more of a catch-up episode. But I also just want to do a quick formal introduction just in case somebody has not met Charles before and is watching this podcast, because the old one, unfortunately, is not archived. That was when I was stupid and forgot to download the episodes. They were on Twitch and it's erased. And I'm so bitter because I talked to so many cool people like yourself and all that content's gone. But, you learn, you grow. And we got this one and it's going to be great. So formal introduction. Just a couple quick bullet points to reintroduce yourself to Charles. He was in management consulting right out of college. Decided after a couple years that's probably not the greatest fit. Found crypto in 2018. Got into it in all sorts of fashion. Worked for a DeFi startup. And then honestly, let's be honest, the rest is history. Dude has got one of the hottest companies in Web3 right now, especially because Web3 gaming is kind of the meta. Although I don't know, it feels like it's cooled off a little bit now. It's shit coins and airdrops and all the other things that are happening. But yeah, man, I think instead of asking and going straight into the midlife crisis question, let's just catch up, man. 2022, probably about over a year and a half ago at this point. I remember when you were talking, you took us around kind of the islands. You were talking about items and stuff dropping. Like it was nascent, right? It was not fully quite. I mean, it was developed. You could go around, but it seems like you've done a lot from now. Catch us up since then, man.
Yeah, definitely. So I think when we spoke, we were in the midst of a long push to get the game from being a really rudimentary alpha experience that our core community was playing, but which wasn't really ready to be shared with the rest of the space and get everyone involved. So we were pushing hard to improve that experience and get it to a point where we felt we could really launch it and blow it up. That since then, we've done that. So on January 18th, we put out the Nifty Island open beta. Many tens of thousands of people have tried it since then. And I'd say within Web3, it's become sort of the default game for NFT enthusiasts, which has been great. So that's kind of where we're at. But it was a long push. It was a tough push. Right. But we got it out there.
So that's where Midlife Crisis Podcast differs a little bit. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy, right?
Good.
We're talking it's a long push, right? Talking a year and a half. I think that my first question, easy question for me is, did you expect it to take that long?
No. I think things almost always take about twice as long as you think. And with games, that can be even more crushing a kind of ratio. And so I would say it definitely took a little over twice as long as I thought it would take, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now let's dig deeper into that. Like, what did you have um typical gaming production headaches, I'm assuming? Were there things specific to Nifty Island in your process? What their setbacks? What were they? What did they look like? Like, give me some examples of what you were dealing with.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a couple things. So when you're making a UGC game world, one where like users create the content, it's a big open world. There's two big buckets of problems you encounter, and we certainly experienced both. One is that the surface area of the product is immense. So you're basically creating a game world where you don't know what's going to be in it. You don't know what's going to be created on top of it. And so there's tons of edge cases, problems, things that can, not be performant. You can have islands have too many objects on them such that they don't load in properly. You can have users build things that are just a kind of a bad experience, and you need to sort of find a way to hem them towards the right outcomes. And so basically you've got this big set of problems where the game fundamentally, to make it performant and work, is harder because you don't know what is being put into the game. People can upload anything to the game, and so there's that side of things. And then the other kind of big bucket of problems that we had to deal with that were really tricky was just game design stuff. Like when you have a big open game world concept, the biggest problem you can often encounter is that it's unclear what to do in it. Like, why should I spend time here? Like, what's the motivation? It's just, you can walk around like a ghost and not be sure what to do. And so we had to really put a huge amount of work into both making the game performant, but also making it fun and making sure users had a clear mandate. And so there were like it's design challenges, and then it's also just kind of technical challenges of making the game function. I mean, both sides of that were really tough.
Dude, yeah. And I love that you break those down, because I think the latter is what's really interesting to me too. Because you were part of that, right? And we all understood the potential of Web3. We still do, right? And there were companies like you. Leapin has become buddies too. I'm sure you know the Leapin guys. And they were coming with these similar struggles. They're like, I know I need to make a metaverse, but then what? So talk to me about that specific problem. Is it using the community to help guide that vision? Did you feel like you had to craft that more yourself? How long did it start getting that strategy? Because right now, if I look at Nifty Island, it looks like you have some idea, right? You've got the palm tree drops. You're interjecting people's communities. But in the beginning, like, how are you creating that thesis? That's interesting to me.
Right. Yeah. So we've always had sort of two dueling theses that we built around. One has been that we can make a user-generated content game world that behaves in a very different way. Roblox and Fortnite are games where very few people make content, and most people just sort of show up and run the experiences that exist, but they don't have an active role in the game world. Right. And our view was that the existing game worlds are a little bit like YouTube, where very few people create, most people consume. We were interested in saying, is there a short form version of user-generated content that is sort of the TikTok to Roblox's YouTube, something where anyone can hop in and create, and as a result, there's way more kind of unexpected and emergent behavior, interesting content every time you come in. So that was one big part of the thesis that we built around. And then the other side of it was this NFT thesis, which was there are tons of amazing communities, deep internet communities. Game worlds thrive on deep participation online, and NFT communities offer that in spades. Let's service all of them. Let's try and build a platform that is like a public good for all these communities to use. So we're building with those two big things in mind throughout. And so a lot of ideas are downstream of that. On the user-generated content side, we'd say, okay, everyone gets an island. That's the short form kind of UGC concept we have. But then you need to motivate people and say, how can we make building a cool island really straightforward and kind of easy? How can we motivate people to build it through a cool progression system where they're kind of earning resources in game? And how can we motivate people to go check out other islands? So that was a big task, was just making that function. then the community side was like more of a technical challenge of like getting all the avatars in and
right.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
No, that's fantastic. And I think so many questions already that comes through. I think I actually want to rewind once again, because when we talked in 2022, how big was your company at that point?
It's kind of oscillated up and down, but I think it's always been it's been a bit above and it's been a bit below the like kind of 29-30 mark.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the idea.
and I think that was. And then so talking about you talked about your big challenges, right? There's just the development side of like, how do you cobble together UGC content and make it work? And then 2 is, hey, hold on, my dog's barking.
All good.
Hold on. Literally have no clue what he was barking at. Okay.
Classic dogs.
Sorry about that. So you had the 2 dilemmas, right, that you were dealing with. My question to you is, somebody that is in that dilemma, or someone that's interested in what you're doing, what advice would you give to that person back in 2022?
Someone who wants to embark on something like this.
Yeah, and just either want to embark on something like this, are in the heat of doing it, and you look back from now to when we talked, and you're like, shit, man, I really shouldn't have wasted my time on that, or I really shouldn't have done that. Anything pop in your head?
Yeah. So I guess I'll maybe give advice that's different for the person who's considering starting. I think the most straightforward, simple advice I could give is just that they have to be absolutely all in on it. Like it has to be that you just inflexibly want to do it. Because what we've seen with so many, like I think other projects that are doing games or doing open game world concepts, is without deep conviction around what you're building and why, you either give up or you end up not building with a specific user and a specific thesis in mind, and the project or the product just doesn't end up being anything that is like absolutely stellar to a specific group of people, and so it doesn't resonate. And so I think just for someone just starting, like they have to really know where their convictions lie, because it's going to be a really difficult push. And so and then for someone in the throes of it, let's see, for someone in the throes of it, I think they probably need to both have like I think my advice would be for them really focusing on who the actual user is that you're going to start to build for, and then building features very specifically for them. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that you see with a lot of Web3 gaming projects is that I think they're not sure who their user is. They're building for like an imaginary future person who kind of doesn't care about NFTs, but like might one day, and you're trying to Trojan horse NFTs into their game experience. This whole sort of narrative of like, we're going to trick people into enjoying NFTs. Like, I think you need to get really serious about saying like, who is actually going to absolutely love this game on day one, and like, what is it that I need to build for them to really enjoy it? That's important.
I love that, and I think that's great advice, and I appreciate that response, because it's going to put you on the spot there. And if at any time you're like, all right, man, that's just too early and that's too much for me to think about, it's always okay to say.
It's okay. No, keep it coming.
I love what you said there, though, but to the thesis of the user, right? So during this time period, and I know right now it's continuing to evolve. So your thesis of the user was like these tight-knit NFT communities. Did you hit the nail on the head there? Did you have to go off course a little bit? What did that user journey look like from what your perceptions were to reality? I'm interested in that.
Yeah. So I think that the starting point we have here has been a success on a whole. Like I think we thought very carefully about what NFT communities wanted, the people who operate them, the people who are the most active participants in them. We thought about the fact that really like being present on the timeline, like growing your IP and your presence on Twitter is a huge motivating factor for people. We built the game around that. We know that people want rewards. We know people like flexing. We know people like kind of showing off their skill. And we know that there's some really talented 3D artists in the space that want to contribute and to the communities they care about too. So I'd say like I think we definitely struck a chord with the initial release.
Right.
And I overall feel really good about it. There's tons to do. It's not like to keep the ball rolling. Like there's a lot more we're going to be rolling out, but I do think for a first take, like it kind of went how I wanted it to. So no complacency there, but I am pleased with the initial reaction for sure.
Right.
It was good. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I think the thesis is right. And I have the same kind of thesis, you know, my PFP is the plague too, right? And we talk about this, or I talk about this ad nauseum on the show too, is right. Everyone says Web3 is the innovation. Yes, it's an innovation, but in my mind, the real innovation is the brand 3.0, right? Like you can intimately work with your community and grow a brand step in step like never before because of just, and it's not even it's interesting. It's the perception of what Web3 brings to you, because you now you've kind of got that idea of like your community is a stockholder, even though they're not, but that perception is there, where it just gives them that extra layer of intimate caring and understanding and excitement about your product. Do you feel like that holds true? Do you feel like that aligns? Do you feel that?
Definitely. Yeah. I think the players we have are incredibly active and they play in a way that normal players don't. I think when people own, core to our thesis was that when people own like an NFT or a PFP, they use the internet in a very different way. Like they are really devoted to the products they use. They are really active and creative. They're kind of entrepreneurial about how they use the internet. And that's definitely been the case. Like people have used every inch of surface area of the product, and in a way that is like way more intense than you'd find like in the kind of normal internet. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in kind of, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on from kind of like then till now? Anything else that pops up? If not, that's totally fine.
I think no. I mean, the only thing I'll say is when I think back on that period is how much that 2022 like period, that bear market period, was so much about like kind of people didn't really know what games should be in Web3, and there was a lot of abstract conversation about it. A lot of things that got hyped for like a month or two, and so I guess on that topic of advice for people too, I'd say like so important to just have your convictions and you know, because there was a lot of talk in that period. That was like the era of talk. It really was.
But it, you know, ironically enough, it is now too, right? Because
oh yeah.
It's in quote unquote the meta, right? So everyone is again latching onto that. And now you have companies like yourself that have been building for multiple years, and you're reaping the true benefits because you've built something real, and it's not just the fake and the hype. I think that actually brings up a really interesting question and an insight that I'd love to hear. We've talked about the benefits of obviously Web3, brand 3.0. You've got these people that are really convicted to using their product, especially when you layer in their IP and their NFTs. What are the those are the advantages of building in this new Web3 ecosystem. What do you think the disadvantages are between having a company like yourself or, being able to build like a Roblox or a Fortnite, right? Like what are some of those struggles and experiences you've dealt with that you think are specific to Web3?
Yeah, there's a bunch. One of the ones I think about the most often is I think Web3 is really punishing when it comes to like iterating and getting things wrong. We haven't had too many bad experiences with this because we're really aware of it and are trying to avoid it. But every time you put something on chain, you can't take it back. And so like someone who does like a kind of a misguided NFT drop or like a token too early or something like that, you really can't walk it back. Like you can't iterate your way out of that. You've suddenly if you've issued some kind of weird like on-chain asset that people are kind of consider closely associated with you, you can't really walk that back. So
Yeah.
I think like iteration and mistakes are punished really heavily in a way that they are not at all in like kind of the normal internet. So that's a big one. And then other things I think are, and this is probably also one of the toughest things that a lot of companies are struggling with, is that in Web3, there's this really like intense enthusiast group that uses it all the time and really loves it. And it's a really small market of people. So you kind of like the path to building a big product, like getting to like a Coinbase or a Binance sort of scale, is really unclear and difficult because basically there's a really small group of enthusiasts that probably need to like your product. And then you need to win them over and then find a way to, grow it from there. And both steps there are really kind of difficult. And it's not like a normal product where you just put it out and, there's like a big mass consumer audience of millions that you kind of are trying to, win over. Like it's sort of, there's an enthusiast scene that you have to navigate that is really particular. And a lot of people neglect that or think they can build a crypto product without it, but I don't think you can. So anyway, the path to market, like the path to growth, is really winding.
I think you bring up a thing, because here's what's confusing to me, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this, is because yes, you're building something with Web3 technology, but what you're building exists already in, let's say, Fortnite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are hundreds of millions of gamers across the world. We know the market's there. So is that problem of scaling specific to Web3, or is that just specific to growing a game in general? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think growing a game in general is really hard too. But what's different with Web3 is that, so when you look at games, some people like Web3 technology is something, like being on chain is something that a small group of people are really, really into. And they use the internet in a really radically different way. They just behave super differently than other people online. And so you've got a bunch of people who love it. And then you've got a bunch of people who are totally disinterested by it or hate it. And that is what makes it really different. Is if you were making like Pal World, or you're making, let's make a new extraction shooter, just a normal game, there's not really it's not like there's a group of people who are this radical subculture that really will love your game. And then there's tons of people who will hate it or really be intimidated by it, not want to participate in it. Like you're just looking at a bunch of gamers who might want to play your game, and you can just reach out to them in general. You can advertise on like IGN or a big YouTube channel, and just the general swath of gamers will be like, oh, okay, interesting. Some of them won't care. Some of them will play. But with crypto gaming, it's like, there'll be an enthusiast crowd that will like reach out to you immediately if you say you're going to make the game. Like they're going to come in and they're going to be like, can I get involved? Let's do it. And that's pretty unique, the enthusiasm there. But the reception of the wider kind of internet is going to be like ambivalence or like even just extreme dislike.
I think that's actually great insight in the fact that and it is, again, this kind of like branding mechanism that perception is really reality in this situation. What you're creating has some Web3 layers, right? Which honestly, if you look at it, the Web3 layers are a huge benefit to a gamer. They potentially could monetize things that they are building and earning, right? Like who wouldn't want that? But yet and I think about this as the larger ecosystem, and I don't know. This is where my head goes. I don't know if this is true, but like you've got people like EA and these multi-billion-dollar Blizzard and Activision actively pursuing to kind of create that negative sentiment about Web3 gaming, because ultimately, if Web3 gaming wins, you're now taking money out of their pocket in a lot of billions, in the tune of billions of dollars. Have you witnessed that happen from a traditional gaming thing? Do you think that's just a product of happening, or is that getting kind of like conspiracy theory type stuff?
I think I don't know I'd say, when you look at like Ubisoft or something, like you have big publishers who are experimenting with it kind of cautiously. So I think basically what it is that companies like EA or Activision or Ubisoft, although Ubisoft seems to be one of the most open to Web3,
Right.
at least from what I can tell, they're kind of like, they have a good thing going. It works. But they're aware that they should do something with this new trend. They see the potential in it. But their player base is really not very open to it at all, and so they're kind of just stuck in this position where they kind of see that they probably need to innovate eventually, but it's but they have a good thing going, so it's it's kind of that innovator's dilemma. So I don't think they're actively trying to kind of FUD it, and I don't really think they have to, because I think so many other people are doing that organically. So I don't know.
No, I think that's good insight, and I think it's really interesting that, because you've been in this for so long, you've studied every angle and nuance, which I think gets me to kind of the next, I think, interesting topic is, why do you think Fortnite and Roblox and all of these massive games, Minecraft, right? What do they do so well? Why do billions of people play these things? And how do your insights or intuitions about why they're successful, how do you apply them to what you're doing?
So I think when you look at those huge UGC game worlds that you've listed out, like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox,
right?
What's definitely interesting to me when I look at them is just it's sort of I think the things they do, the things that are appealing about them, I think are pretty clear, big open game world concept, third space that everyone's in. They aggregate player liquidity. The game is surprising and fun every time you come. There's new things going on. And so each of those games, I think they all benefit from the fact that users are making the content, basically. They've got the flywheel going of some people coming in, creating new content for players. Every time they come, there's really crazy new content.
Right.
And it's a lot of what's good about YouTube or TikTok or Instagram is you don't know what you're going to see every time you open it up. You open it up and you're like, oh, interesting. What's this? And I think they capture that as a game pretty well. And they have all the, and then there's a lot of fundamental things they're doing right as well. They're kind of more nuts and bolts. But I think when I look at those, I actually think okay, UGC game worlds clearly make sense. It's interesting how few there are. And it's interesting how many don't work out. And I think it's once you get to escape velocity and you have tons of people playing and tons of people creating, it just sort of will reinforce itself. Right. And then what's really interesting to me is why do so many things die en route to that? And that's why I'm so interested in Web3 in a lot of ways when it comes to gaming is I think it offers new ways of getting from game world idea to escape velocity, because you can get all these deep internet communities in, you can use interesting incentives to pull people in and to create, you can have better creator incentives. So that, and you can have wild prizes as well, kind of one-off competitions. So,
So I think you said two really interesting things there. And then we can kind of move to current state. Fascinating conversation, by the way. I've wanted to know all of this, and not what a better person than you to give me this information. So you said two things there. They do fundamental things really well. What is that? What does that look like? What do you need to do really well? Because like you said, I agree with that. They're successful because they've created that TikTok mentality in the gaming world. So I get that. But what do they have to do well that are just kind of table stakes?
Yeah, I mean, so I think if you break it down into they have to fundamentally every game just has to activate users and then retain them. And so what are the things that do that? I think on the activation side, it's these days you need to have a game that works well with social media spectacle. It has to be fun to stream, it has to be fun to share. All three of those games tick that box. People want to make content around them and share them. Minecraft has become a stage for interesting kind of interesting streaming content, social content. Endless stuff comes out of it. Fortnite, same thing. It's one of the most clippable, shareable games. Roblox has like a massive creator community too. So you kind of say like on the activation side, like they've got it, like it has something for everyone and everyone wants to share it. That's pretty important. And then on the retention side, I think it's a bunch of things. Like they all have a pretty like straight, maybe with Roblox, maybe to the least degree, but it doesn't seem to matter. They all have like a very kind of a clear like progression system, clear mandate for the user. They have great game feel. It's just fundamentally fun to run around and do stuff. And then in all cases too, like there are just it's just so easy to make, or not. It's not so easy, but there's a lot of content that people can readily make on top of it. There's tons of game modes, tons of Minecraft private servers, tons of Roblox experiences. Fortnite now with creative, has that going on too. Yeah. So I mean, these are some things.
Yeah, and they're giving I didn't know an exhaustive list, but they have the creator tools in place as well. And so there's this so do you got the Degenheim guy? Have you heard of that game?
Yeah, I'm talking to them a little bit.
Yeah, so I had Milan on my show. It's a fantastic dude, really really good podcast. Nice. And he brings this up as well. And at the bottom, at the end of the day, when you're playing games or you're in a metaverse, right? Mm-hmm. One of the main things you're doing is detaching a little bit from reality, right? You're taking a break and you're trying to entertain yourself, and ultimately you're trying to have fun, right? I'm interested in you hear from your perspective. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest conundrums or problems that you're trying to solve is fun, right? Mm-hmm. How do you make your thing fun? But from like a business, like I've got 30 people in my company, how do you research and how do you cultivate fun? Is that a product of making your company fun and then you think it bleeds over into the product? Do you have specific brainstorming sessions about what fun is? Are there, do you go out and research and play games to understand what fun is? How do you cultivate fun? I think it's interesting.
I think I think basically it has to come out of you have to be able to kind of experiment, and you have to be able to just try stuff. Because I think like fun is definitely not something that you can totally premeditate. And I think if you were in this position where you like can't take any risks and you can't like try things, it's really hard to discover the fun. And and so I'd say on multiple levels we're doing that. Like on the one hand, like the game itself is built in a way where we can put out a game you can play on your island, and one of them might not be fun, and we can just build another. So like the game is super iterative, just fundamentally, like where there are basically islands, there are games you can play on it, you can get from island to island, there are communities on them. We can add things to this game, pretty much endlessly. And so that's what's really great about it too, is if you're building a game that's like a super narrow loop where it just is what it is, it's like a medieval strategy game. If you get it wrong, it's pretty hard to pivot it.
Right.
It just is what it is, right? Whereas with like Nifty it was built as something that can be iterated on pretty easily. And then on an organizational level, I like the way we approach it is that our engineers own features end to end, and they are people who love games. And so when you have something like, hey, let's create a system for how to build an island, or create like a team deathmatch shooter game you can play, like the things that make that fun all come down to kind of like game feel and mechanics. And you can't really write all of that down. And you can't, like, that's the sort of stuff you just have to feel. And someone has to be really deeply committed to just sort of like iterating and pushing on that for a long time. So to me, it's like having the room to experiment and then letting engineers like really run with it, I think is super important. Having people who care and letting them run with it, because again, you can't like, you can't like capture fun in a bottle,
Right. No, 100%. And I think that is, it's one of the principles that I use and talk about. If you like, go outside gaming, right? And conversation we talk about a lot here is so often you hear people say, hey, I'm just not good in anything, or I don't have a passion at all, and I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, the only thing you can do is try shit, right? And
For
you
sure.
eventually might find something that you like. And it's the same concept as fun, right? It's amazing to me the amount of times I hear people have problems due to a product of inaction, right?
For sure.
And
For
it's
sure.
I don't know where that comes from or what we've created to create that, but I mean, I think it's, you could ladder all the way up to that. That's, people say this all the time that like that's the way the human brain is wired, right? Is to be safe, and complacency is a product of that. But yeah, no, I think you're spot on, and I think I ran creative departments in the past myself, and how do you get novel new ideas? You have to just make shit, right?
Totally.
You got to go experience things. You got to put yourself in new environments and different situations and meet new people. Like that's ultimately how you do it.
100%. 100%.
I love that insight. So I actually want to do, before we kind of go, I want to be cognizant of time. We got like another 20 minutes. And I want to definitely talk about current state and what the future looks like. But I think you're a fantastic candidate to go outside of Web3, right? So you went to college, you had a couple years of consulting, and now you're running at current stage one of the more popular Web3 games in a really young industry, and you're a leader and you're an entrepreneur. I really am interested in that journey, and from that perspective of building a company from nothing, learning lessons, pains, growth. Let's just start with like the pain points, the learning lessons, looking back. Just talk to me about that from a business perspective more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think some of the most challenging things have been that making a game like this is such a crazy, like kind of long-term bet, right? In a space that's all about like short-term optionality and flipping and such. And so that's a challenge. And so I think, that the probably some of the most difficult things that caused for us was just the feeling that we needed to do everything tomorrow and like a real like push for speed, which I think was right. Like you do want to move quickly and get something out there. I think most of the mistakes we made from a product development perspective that maybe cost us time or resources were usually when we were trying to move like too quickly and not being like thoughtful enough. So that balance, I think there's no easy answer to it, but that balance of like needing to move quickly and get something out there, but also not like making like silly, rash decisions about like how a feature should work or a system should work it's not an easy to resolve thing. But that definitely that there's many examples where
I love that, because I think, and we actually have this narrative a lot too, like coming from more of like me, like a podcast content creator perspective, right? Is you see people with followings, you see people with more likes and more comments, and you're like, well, I just need to get as much content out as possible, which is true. But like you can easily then start losing the path of your why, right? And like what is your blueprint of your content? And then you just start trying to replicate people and you lose your voice, right? Which is like kind of a product of what you said. So I love that insight. I think that's a super powerful insight. I'm also interested though, more like, let's take out the gaming perspective, like straight business, right? So like was it managing the finances? Was it finding the right team members? Was it you trying to take on too much of yourself and not delegating enough? Like what were some of those struggles that you felt like were at the forefront during this process?
Oh yeah, I mean all of those for sure. So
Like
yeah.
for you personally, like I know everyone's
Yeah.
heard, the typical, but I'm interested in like kind of your personal journey and the things that stick out to you the most.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a bunch of stuff like on like building a team and stuff. It's something we did well, but it is really difficult. Like
Yeah.
trying to find people who are uniquely passionate about what you're building and putting out a beacon to get them excited and creating a team that's really dedicated, that wants to build something great and kind of believes they can build something great.
Yeah.
That's a big process. And it's funny because you'll be looking for someone and you imagine in theory that it's like, oh, okay, you're looking at 12 resumes and you pick like, you had 5 that maybe could make sense and you pick the
Right.
best one. In a lot of cases for us, it came down to finding like the one person that we could find at all who was like actually like excited and able to do it.
Right.
Like I can think of like the character controller for the game, like how it feels to move around and such. Like looking around for someone who really does that well and is excited about our game. Like we basically found one person who was awesome, and we had to get that one person to join. And there's so many things like that, whether it's recruiting or fundraising or even like kind of maintaining kind of like hype and excitement publicly about a product, that just come down to these like kind of just binary, like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Sort
Right.
of moments, and where there's no backup really. And so I think like the one thing I think of a lot is just like in the early stages of something, it kind of comes down to these hurdles that you have to get over, or like you'll probably be kind of injured as a company and like, likely fail.
Right.
So in those, the earlier you are, like the more binary it is, the more it's just like, you have to get this done or you'll fail. And then later stage, it's more marginal. Like you have this safe thing that exists and you're growing it. And we're, starting to enter into that phase. But yeah, I think that for me, like the stress and the like kind of work of it is just that in the earliest stages, it really is like, you need to have, like, it comes down to just getting so many things right or you fail. Like you have to hire the right person or you fail. You have to, have that moment like in the shower where you think like, oh shit, we should build, the quest system like this, or like, oh, the progression system in the game should work like this.
Right.
If you don't have that idea, you fail.
Right.
And it just is so many things like that where it's just completely binary. And that's like the era we've been in, is this era of like, okay, we have to get everything right or it's not going to work.
I love that. And I think I had this guy Benny on, and we were talking about like an offshoot of this, which is he was a serial entrepreneur, started 4 restaurants and had a couple other businesses. But the painstaking part of being an entrepreneur like yourself is you're talking years, right? Like, so you could go 6 years still be in technically that binary phase and make the wrong decision and you're done. And then now you have 6 years of your life. Now, yes, listen, you've learned a lot, you've grown, but you technically got to start over again. And it brings me to kind of the next insight that I hear a lot. And I'm interested in you, because some people say not as much, but there's got to be a factor of luck in there, right? Like, what do you think about that kind of like those uncontrollable elements, right? You can control so much, but like, do you think timing, luck, or any of that stuff played out? And what did that look like to you?
Yeah. I think luck is definitely one way of viewing it. I don't tend to look at it as luck
I like this.
too much. For me, like something I definitely think that feels like luck is there's a window in time for an idea. And for us, like there was a window in time where we could raise money to get started on it. There's like a window in time where people want to, or people are excited to work on it and join a team, to do something. And then there's a window in time where the market is open and you can launch it. Right. And you could call it luck to, raise at the right time, hire at the right time, launch at the right time, like that. You could call it luck, or it's like, a big part of this is just like looking at the terrain and saying like, and knowing when you need to like aggressively move in and try it. Right. So basically like there's definitely this element where being in the right place in the right time is everything. But I don't really view it so much as luck as like just windows in time where things are possible. And like a big part of like, making something successful is like acting at the opportune moment.
No, I love that, man. And I think that's that's a more, you're taking the calculated risk and you're being aware of your ecosystem, which makes, a product of very successful entrepreneurs. Another way to say it is you can, whether you want to call it or not, you can increase your luck by doing the right work at the right time in the right place. So I actually really, really like that angle, which I think is actually a perfect segue into present day. What were you thinking about that? I'm assuming like the whole gaming meta, right? And it's, I'm assuming calculated. I literally like went back through our Discord, was cleaning up my Discord, and I was like, holy shit, man. I talked to Charles in 2022 because I had been seeing you all over the place, and it was lining right up with the gaming meta stuff. Was that like that's where I'm interested of your insights, because whether it's luck or not, timing is like you couldn't create the gaming meta, right? You just had to be aware that existed and then pivot your messaging and marketing accordingly, right? So can you just talk to me about that timing?
Yeah. I think for us, we tried to think from first principles about like what made sense to build. And for us, the big inspiration wasn't the gaming meta necessarily, because as you said, it didn't exist when we started. For us, it was, okay, NFTs, fundamentally interesting. Like they are one of the few things you can do on the blockchain right now. They're and I looked at it like I had been a part of, but more in the passenger seat, like the emergence of DeFi and the kind of ecosystem that now exists around coins and tokens. And I kind of saw that develop really quickly. And then when NFT started, I was looking at it and saying like, okay, like this is going to be this whole other category that is going to be as big as DeFi and tokens and all this stuff. And what are the things that need to be built around NFTs? That was how we thought about it. Like if NFTs are going to be big, we just radically accept that. Then what is it that's going to have to be built? And we thought like, okay, this sort of open social gaming platform where all the NFTs can spend time. And there's some other things we're going to build too around it as well. But that was we kind of thought that made sense from first principles. And then we just went all in on it. And honestly, and the cool thing about Nifty is I think we could have done well, like, regardless of the meta, like call it gaming, like we're related to that. Say gaming wasn't the narrative and it was just PFPs and other NFTs. We are related to that. Say it was UGC or something, we're related to that.
Right.
Like say it was GameFi, like more, we're involved with that. So I think if you do something that robustly makes sense from first principles, there's a good chance that it could be relevant under many different like narrative scenarios.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think there were too many worlds in which what we were doing was like totally irrelevant, unless like NFTs fell off completely, which I didn't think they were going to do.
Right. No, and I think back to your point is the first principles, and just being grounded and rooted in that, and having a very clear thesis and a why, like we've talked about from the beginning. And those are just that people miss the mark all the time because they're like, oh, there's money to be made, I must do X. And they have no plan. They have no understanding of what they're truly trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
To your point. And it's just amazing to see how many people waste so much money and time based off of idea because they feel like they react to the market with not really a purpose behind it.
Definitely.
I think, man, I had such a great question and I lost it. Let's move on to kind of current state. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask. I'm interested in this because it's that, that saying of like, if you try to do everything, you're doing nothing at all. And you're doing a lot, right? So like, how do you balance like, because you have, I'm pretty sure you have a token, right? Or
not yet, but I mean, there's one coming.
Okay,
People are trying to
you're
get.
working on a token. You've got airdrops. You're going down the UGC, you're going down the NFT path, right? There is a lot of tentacles there. Does that make you nervous, or is that part of your strategy? Like, I think the question is how at what point is it too much, and then you feel like you're losing your way and you can't concentrate?
Yeah. I think I think from a product perspective, I think I feel like we're doing the right thing. So what would make me think it was too much would be if we were trying to build for like many different people, where it's like oh, we're building this thing, and it's like it's kind of for like someone who wants to play Candy Crush, and it's kind of who doesn't care about crypto, and it's also for like degens, and it's for 3D artists. That would get me thinking like, okay, maybe we're spreading ourselves too thin. Whereas I view what we're doing as a really concentrated bet on the Web3 enthusiast crowd, on NFT communities. And while there's a lot of different elements to the product, I think they are all like focused on us becoming like a public good that all NFT communities utilize. So I feel it's focused in that way. So yeah, the things when it comes to being spread thin, I think I'd be more worried if we were like trying to please everyone, which I don't think we are. And then the thing that is a very real concern is more just like actual time, like in the day, getting spread too thin in that way. I think that's something I really
100%. And how do you concentrate on the right things? That's, I think, everybody's concern. Just
totally.
I think that's good. So let's move on to like current day, and looking forward. We're almost at an hour, and I want to be cognizant of time. One question that pops into my mind as current day, people can go to your Twitter and figure out everything that's going on. I'm actually interested more in kind of the insights that you've gained, in the sense of how are people using Nifty Island currently? As expected, are there surprises in there? I'm interested in how people are utilizing your platform, what your thesis was, right? Your assumptions, and if you had any like interesting aha moments and surprises along the way.
Right. Oh yeah. There's been a bunch of stuff that's kind of where people have gone further than we thought usually with certain things. So one thing that's interesting is we have our UGC marketplace, and people can create their own 3D assets. I thought it would take a lot longer for people to use that. I thought, people wouldn't be creating their own NFTs so quickly, but they've created a ton. It's like, it must be over 30,000 NFTs now that they've created over like a period of like a month or something, which is pretty good. And so every day you log into Nifty Island, you can find on the web app notifications for free drops and stuff people are doing and giving away through the marketplace. So that was pretty amazing. And I think the level of enthusiasm there is like greater than I thought it would be. So that was pretty cool. And people wanting to like create their own brands, within the kind of the metaverse. So that was interesting. I think too, another surprise we had was just like kind of, you have people who have been playing on things like Decentraland and Sandbox for like quite a long time, and maybe feeling discontented with certain elements of those platforms. And I didn't expect how like significant this sort of like hardcore metaverse like crew is. And so that was really interesting too, like just meeting people who are like so kind of so ready to have like a metaverse space. We thought we maybe would have to encourage that more, but there are some people who are just so ready for it. So that was cool. Other stuff. One thing that's been nice is we have this on-chain prize system that we're rolling out. And people have just been immediately preempting that and doing it before we even roll it out. So like people love prizes. I'll say that too. I kind of knew that, but man, people love prizes. They absolutely love them. So yeah, it's stuff like that.
Isn't it fascinating to me? And it's fine because everybody has their things, but like people are spending hundreds of hours on your platform to get prizes, which is like mind blowing to think, right? Because me personally, I listen, I love gaming. I've had consoles. Like I am 42, so I did not have PC gaming like it is today. So I'm a console guy, right? And I've spent thousands of hours playing games. But just at this moment in my life when I'm like, okay, I can spend 10 hours getting some virtual good, or I could spend 10 hours building a company to, benefit my actual life. I've finally gotten to that point, but it's just fascinating to me. And that goes back to the fun. Like, do you ever just take a step back and go, holy shit, this many people are playing this for this long?
Yeah. I think I do. There are points where you just, I have like real appreciation for that. Definitely. Like it's so cool to see what people make and going to an island where I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could even do this. So that's great. I think the other thing too on that topic is that I think makes Web3 gaming different is people spend a lot of time, but it feels more consequential than just playing like, if you were just playing Minecraft all day,
Right.
you'd be kind of like, I'm just playing a game all day. With Nifty though, because it has this Web3 kind of like token component, because it's so tied into like the Web3 story and the creator economy around it, it feels much more like consequential, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's one of the things crypto does really well is it's like a more consequential, like weighty internet. And so like when you're playing games or hosting a game night, you're not just hosting a random game night. You're contributing to the Pudgy Penguins community or the Savvy Seals community or the Kid Called Beast community. You're getting rewarded for it. You're meeting people. You're networking. Like it's so it's interesting. Like and also you're part of a mission. So it's interesting. Like I think people approach it with real zeal in a way that they probably wouldn't elsewhere.
And I think you and me know this from the beginning. That's why you're doing this, right? Is because
100%.
that is like the holy grail there, right? Is you got people that are not just playing it to detach from reality. They're doing that, a little bit of that, but they actually have skin in the game. And that's why Web3 is just so critically interesting and important, I think, in the evolution of technology in general. I'm assuming, does the Plague have their own island? Or I'm assuming there's a lot of Plague people in there.
Oh yeah, they've been growing a lot recently. So they were smaller in the game, and now they're in the top 10. So yeah, they've been crushing it. They have their own avatar playable, and I think there's probably hundreds of Plague islands right now.
Yeah. So what do you mean top 10? As in like points earned or things created or?
So right now we're going to be ranking them in more ways, but we rank the different communities that play the game, and one of the rankings we have is just number of members in the game. And and so they're in top 10 on that now.
Gotcha.
That metric. Yeah.
Okay. Dude, we're gonna have to talk again eventually in the future because I'm so interested in like your thoughts on, Apple Vision Pro and when do we actually get into the metaverse and all of that good stuff. But being cognizant of the time, I think kind of I always ask the last follow-up question. But before I get there, my really last question is, what do the next 6 to 12 months look like? What are you what are you super excited about? Anything that you can share with us? Been a fascinating conversation and catching up. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, it's been good. It's been really fun, man. Glad to do it. So yeah, for us, next 6 to 12 months. So there's a lot of short-term stuff that is kind of more like meat and potatoes, kind of a little more predictable, where it's like we're going to be just significantly improving the base game, like adding more game modes, like making it more stable, making it more fundamentally viral and shareable, allowing people to capture better content in the game, making the marketplace better and the NFTs on it more collectible. Like there's a lot where it's almost like, if you have, you want to make sure it carries water and that it really retains and is useful. And so there's a bunch of stuff we're doing in the next, few months that does that. You'll see more waves of the airdrop where we're adding more features, we're pulling in more players. That there's kind of like a ground and pound that we'll do over on that time frame. And then I think over the course of this year, beyond that, you're going to see us do things probably outside the game as well, where our goal on a whole is just to be a platform that NFT communities use for many things. And we want to be this like open utility where if you are a Kid Called Beast holder or Forgotten Runes holder, like it's just natural that you use Nifty every day. Gotcha. And so you'll see us do stuff around like how are these communities socializing? How are people trading around them? We want to play more of a role in different elements there. And then the other thing you'll see from us is just like the game is going to have, and this is where I have to be a little more vague, but like we're going to be adding like big fundamental like elements to the game that like kind of really turbocharge the whole thing. Like I think, yeah, especially around kind of GameFi stuff and like taking it in a more degen direction that I think people don't expect.
Yeah. And so you make up the biggest point, and I think that's people talk utility all the time, and it's right. You've now built a tool that any project can use as their utility if they effectively use your platform with a strategy and a meaning and have people dedicated to it, which is all of these Web3 communities have been looking for forever, and you've created that solution. Yet another way or an angle that you can look at your platforms. It's insanely super interesting. I lied. Last question before my true last question. I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. And we don't, I don't want you to commit to anything saying like, yes, you can. But like, as an early adopter of this game, are we thinking, because I'm always interested in this, like if I say put, I don't know, 10 or 20 hours a week into this thing, can I make the equivalent of minimum wage playing a video game? Like, I think that's where we're all going. Like, as these things roll out, do you see people being able to make NFT money? Like, where do you see the monetization for not for you, but for the user player opportunities?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, the kind of like key thing going on is we have our play to airdrop campaign. So you've got people playing to get awarded a stake in Island token. And I think like, I'm not really going to comment on like the monetary value of that, but I'll say like, if you want to be a real OG and something, in the beginning of something big, like I think it is a no brainer to play. So, so that's cool. And then I think, monetization for players and creators, it's going to look a bunch of ways. Like I think having a cool island, the goal is that becomes like a really kind of lucrative and fun activity. You're going to see us roll out more beyond play to airdrop that kind of makes this clear. But we want it to be that Nifty Island is a no-brainer place to create a cool game space, invite lots of people, host games and competitions, and earn through doing it. And then for players who don't even want to create, it's about having like prize-fueled competitions where people can play and grind and get rewarded for it. So and then for 3D creators, you can drop your own NFTs on the marketplace. So that as well will grow. Yeah.
And that's a huge opportunity alone. You've already got a platform to visualize your NFT and monetize it that way.
For sure.
That's fantastic. So I had another question, lost that as well, but let's just wrap it up, man. I know your time is insane. The last question, I'm actually really interested in this because our typical format, I don't know if you remember Maddie from last time. He had to get a regular job, unfortunately, and we just can't be doing this together all the time, and I didn't want to halt it. But our typical format is that longer format, right? We do the Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 being like your childhood, 2 being deeping into your, we would have gone into your consulting management, and then 3 would have been Web3. This is kind of a follow-up format, intentionally shorter and catching up. What was your experience here on the podcast today compared to the hundreds of spaces and stuff that you have done in the past? Like, would you rate it a good experience? Do you have any feedback for me? Because I know that I can't continue to do just the long format podcast. So what did you think about the time here on Midlife today?
I thought it was great. Yeah, I think this was like definitely a pretty different conversation that was more like kind of an inside look. Usually, like I think usually we're kind of just talking about the output, not really like how it's all made. So so I think it was good, and I think for people who are like really curious about getting deeper into like how we think about things, it'll be really good. So yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it, man. So
thanks, man. And that's exactly the angle we're going for. So I'm good. I feel good that you still felt that way, even though we condensed it down. Because I feel like the questions that were asked, at least, you're not getting asked in your typical spaces, and that's what we're going for. So, and dude, I mean, we covered some really interesting stuff from your insights. So we'll be able to cut this up. Cannot wait to cut this up, bring you back some more video, and that's it, man.
That sounds great.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're insanely busy. Midlife Crisis fam, We are so excited that you stopped by. We had people watching us the whole time. They were commenting, but we're going to put you up on YouTube. You'll be able to watch this from whenever you want. We've got one more podcast for the week on Thursday. Can't wait to see you all. Charles, thanks for your time.
Hell yeah.
Midlife Crisis is out. And I have no clue where my mouse is. And there we go. We're going to end the stream right now.